I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into it. Okay, guys, real quickly before I go into it, I actually want to show you the box set for Dungeons & Dragons Online. This came out in 2006. This box was actually a very limited run because they weren't expecting it really to do as well as it did. And that's a big thing. So shortly after that, it became available for online purchase or that type of thing. And when it became free to play, for sure, it became a thing that was done where you would download it directly, and that. So they didn't use those box sets for very long. I still have the original box. If you want me to do more videos talking about what it was like to play in beta and when the game first came out, and the radio station that was on Kyber that literally would play music on an online type of live stream type of radio station, let me know in the comments down below. Or if there's more videos on this, or if you want me to get into some of the other specific genres like Keeping the Borderland, the B2, or getting into the Acquisitions Incorporated, which, has Jim Blackmagic and all these other characters in there, like Will Wheaton might be in there. I don't know. I don't have some of these, so I'd have to get them, but there are some others I do have. Well, when I say don't have, I mean they're purchasable modules in game. I do have like 8 Barrel and a bunch of others at one point in time. I basically had all that had come out at that point in time. So I do have some points. I'll talk sometime about how I buy my points, when I buy my points, and when I look to buy different modules and whatnot, and we can go from there. But let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. We're back here again and outside of House J in the Delera's Graveyard. We're doing the Delera's Chain, which is again narrated by Gygax. You'll see in here that I'm having a little bit of lag throughout some parts of it, but we're going to go in through the left side over here of these three, and this is going to be part 2. There will be a part 3. Really 3 and 4 will be together. We'll just call it 3. And then we'll go from there as far as what we're doing after that. And this module, again, looks like it has a lot of twists and turns and a lot of routes, but it's kind of linear. You have to open these things and do all these traps, and you have to do all these puzzles per se, but the reality is there's only one way through the dungeon with a bunch of optional things, and that's kind of a thing that I think was very common with video games up in the early days.
You notice a rusty lever behind the grate to the side of the hallway.
That they wouldn't necessarily have 2 complete separate paths that you could go to. That probably was a little bit more common later. But that's okay. I really love this game. And as you can see, there are certain things here for skills and whatnot that pop up. If you get the text, that means that by skill, you made the determination that you could see something. If you just see it with like True Sight, I don't think the text pops up. But there are lots of ways to get skills beyond what your character builds every time it levels. You have the you go up a level, you put your ranks in, that type of thing, so you can get a point, and you got your stats that go up and you can get your point there. But there's also enhancement, there's magic items, there's buffs through ship buffs, there's buffs through like actually having those buffs cast on you, and this type of thing. But yeah, there's many ways you can get there through enhancements, and then later on through like the destiny paths and all that type of stuff, and epic levels. epic paths, lots of things. So, like I said, there's many ways that your characters can advance. There's also past lives. So if you have a past life of a thief, you get +1 to all skills. And if you have past life of a fighter, it increases your DC. DC being difficulty number. Basically, it's a number your opponent has to resist. They have to roll their skill higher or their ability higher than your DC. If they fail to do so, then they are affected by whatever you're doing, whether it's a trip, knockdown, or or some other thing, or yeah, you get the general idea. I'm just having those two stick in my head really strong, but there's other ones. Many ways to advance your characters beyond just leveling up every time. Let me go ahead and talk, though, like I have been, about other modules and what it was like to probably play in that period of time. For those who follow my other content, I have some original Dungeons & Dragons videos that have come out talking about what it's like to play and what the rules were back then and maybe some of their interpretations. And I feel like this is a pretty good place to talk about it since we have Gygax doing the narration in the few places he narrates in this dungeon. So back then there was different genres, and one of the things they had sci-fi was a big element. In Supplement 2, Blackmore, which was the one that Dave Arneson did, there was a Temple of the Fallen. And if you don't know or haven't seen that, within there is there's a lot of things that kind of hint at the fact that there was a sci-fi element. You have a guy in a suit of armor that is powered by some sort of source that basically makes him able to travel in the vacuum of space, essentially a spacesuit. Some of his communication arrays and this type of stuff kind of sounds like a sci-fi thing. His teleports seem to be that type of stuff. Lots of little things like that. Depending on how much you want that to be in your game, really depends on what elements of that you play up. But this is not the only one. It was later released again under the DA series. There's 4 in there. All of those are for DA for Dave Arneson, as far as I know. And I'll get into another one called City of the Gods, which was another one that Arneson kind of was a part of that was very sci-fi. Probably in like its own video. But you can imagine a floating city type of thing and all that type of stuff being very sci-fi-like. One of the most probably in-your-face sci-fi would be S1. S1 is Expedition to Bury Your Peaks. And when you go inside the dungeon itself is got metal walls, which could be explained through like dwarves and all these type of things. But if you were to look into it more, some of their wands they have, which are handheld and some sort of funny shape, maybe sort of like a laser pistol, shoot out these rays of energy that do damage at a limited source because, there's no way to recharge them. These type of things. And again, some of the gear is specific or has certain vision capabilities and that type of stuff. Again, and there's robots. There's literally like metal golems that run around with some sort of power source that you can defeat. And there's no humans left, or aliens or any of that nature, per se, that would be able to operate anything. There are some alien-like creatures that are like pygmies and whatnot, not to give too much of this away. Eventually I hope to actually maybe run this module as a solo campaign. I think it'd be very interesting for those who have always heard but haven't been able to play it, a chance to see these modules coming out If any of these are things you want to see, let me know in the comments down below again, and I'll try and make that more of a thing. There are, in the other genres, one of the big ones that kind of goes back to what I talked about in the first video with the H.P. Lovecraft stuff. You have this pulp-like contrast for modules that came out, and in there we're talking about things like B3, the Palace of the Silver Princess, where the original author, that publisher that published that, had very progressive point of views for the 70s and 80s that was determined not to be within the scope of what TSR was wanting to release at the time. And these are, for the time especially, very forward-thinking or a different thinking perspective. Bad guys with multiple and additional genitalia. I think it'd be a great way of describing that. Some scenes more sexualized than what TSR probably was comfortable with, which I think was probably a good call considering the time and how prevalent the satanic panic was already. They didn't probably need to poke that bear. They had already done that with other supplements and whatnot, like Supplement 4, which was Eldritch Wizardry, where they had a predominantly naked female of unknown age laid across an altar. Probably not something they needed to go deeper into unless that was a thing they really wanted to go deeper into. I don't necessarily know how that would play out even today in what I would consider a different time. So yeah, definitely they have a difference. Now, why do I talk about that module and go into this depth of detail? Part of what made it so different and pulp-like was the sort of the H.P. Lovecraft feel to it. You had tentacle creatures, you had creatures that were literally bubbles that would float across there and paralyze you and do damage, and all these things which were very different to the stereotypical from the modules prior, and really since you don't see a lot of these type of things there. And these things had levels to them, not first, second, third, fourth level type of thing, but you would get to understand it, and then you would understand how it would relate to other creatures within the same module, and then you'd be like, oh, this great big red mist cloud that surrounds us all is aging us slowly, and there's all of a sudden these occurrences of white apes that are kind of like the ones you would see on Mars in certain movies and whatnot from back in the day, but they're not. And where do they come from, and why does the red aura and these apes have anything to do with each other? And how realistic do you portray an ape, especially a supernatural, super-powered ape? They're probably not in the right scale of things, because frankly a chimpanzee with any sort of supernatural awareness would be more than most humans in any type of armor could deal with, let alone an ape. And that's because we understand the strength of these things far better than maybe they did even back then. Or if you're trying to look into the realism of the game, you would understand that's probably a terrible idea. But it's fun, and fun is also a way to play, and definitely worthy of play. But you have to kind of know what you're getting into. So between fun and realism, there's a spectrum, and somewhere in there is where different genres fit. And I think that's very important to know as well, because you run into these things where you have modules that come out where you have different experiences, and you want to put that into the game, and whether you want it to be to one side or the other of realism really kind of depicts what that looks like. How much you worry about traps, how much you worry about the pool of acid you're swimming across, whatever this might actually be. And then whether you can fight apes or not, or whether apes would just rip the plates off of the armor and you'd end up with a terrible mess. All these things are things that I think you have to kind of look at and evaluate. I'm going to interrupt this real quickly and talk about these levers that are right here. As a single person running through, which is why I run through with a healer, you need someone to sometimes flip levers so you can make it through a portion, and this particular dungeon is one of those. So I end up having the healer flip levers for me so I can get through this, because there's multiple layers of bars and you need someone to do that. And that's kind of a fun thing with this particular dungeon. Alright, so going back to the sort of cult-like genre. Other ones that came out like that, certain like this very Conan, H.P. Lovecraft type of thing, definitely would be X1, Isle of Dread. Isle of Dread is an incredible module where you go to an island that is basically, most people would say it's in the shape of King Kong's island, and is very classic in that way. But then also when you look at this thing, it's very Conan-esque, shall we say. It's very you have your big bad guys. It's not really like a single thing. It's more like you have to figure out this thing and then get off there, and then find your way back. I'll leave that one because I'm going to do that one too for sure. It's a module I own. It's not a module I have in the DDO game, but for sure when I do my solo play stuff, it's a module I want to have for everyone to be able to see and understand and just experience, even if it's through this type of play. And we'll go from there. All right, so those are a couple of the genres. Going into a even more story-based, different than the Tracy Hickman I talked about in the last one, where you have Dragonlance, where you have the spectrum of, or the scale left to right, whatever you want to call it, of railroading versus non-railroading, where B2 is completely non-railroaded. It literally has the Caves of Chaos, which have all sorts of options a DM can do, and then it has the Cave of the Unknown, which is completely undescript, not even mapped, because the DM's supposed to come up with it themselves. To the other side of the spectrum, where you have one of the more railroaded, and I don't know what one that would be, and I don't want to wager a guess, that might be in Dragonlance, where you're basically playing it out as your group played it out and as the books are wrote. So you have to kind of figure out where you want to be in that scale. Well, somewhere in the middle of that, maybe one way or the other, I'll let you guys decide. You have Ravenloft. And Ravenloft is another one of these genres. It came out in 2nd edition AD&D. But I don't think it was first. I think it was second. It came out in first edition. I don't think it was first AD&D. I think it was 2nd edition AD&D. And it was a very interesting one that had some railroad to it, where you were stuck in the mist, and you're stuck in this province, and you have the lord of the province that you have to navigate, and only the lord can allow you out. So you are stuck there until it is time to get out. But you could play many modules, many games, and never leave that particular area. I mean, it is a city. It is a whole area I think when people see that, they think, oh, I'm in, this particular area where Frankenstein is or where Strahd is, and that's my module. Well, no, that could be the campaign ending, and you could have many modules within there that would not be named modules. And I think this is where they missed a little bit with Ravenloft, was that they only had the singular module, the big one. But you could tell many stories in there and then lay in there the Strahd stuff. And eventually the party goes after Strahd. They may have been there since first level and have had many interactions with him that checkmark different things that occur as you go in the actual Strahd module, but they happened over maybe 2 years of play because you are different levels, and then from there, you actually get the full story. But you don't have to play just that specific one, and there's a lot of story in there. Take any village, make a story. You could have 4 or 5 interactions, 4 or 5 modules before you actually get to the end campaign one. And I think that's a big miss that they didn't really do. Like, one of my favorite modules for Ravenloft is called Neither Beast Nor Man, and there's another one called Hour of Knife. Both of these I've run on several occasions. They're both very good modules. They're both very different. Hour of Knife is essentially set in an England type of thing, basically Victorian England, where maybe you might know some serial murderer that went around and killed prostitutes and this type of stuff. Well, anyways, that Jack the Ripper type module is very much a thing, and you can do that very easily in there. Speaking of great loot, this is one of the loot items, and I'll talk more about this in the next video about why these are so good. But let me get back to these modules I'm talking about real quick. And you have the other one is Neither Beast Nor Man, which is based literally on a book and on a movie that came out. The movie and the book are both called Island of Dr. Moreau. They have their own names and everything, but the basic plot of that is that there is a scientist who's trying to graft humans with animals, and basically the complications that come thereof. And that's kind of a creepy, weird thing.
You have recovered Gerald's journal,
very
which describes
H.P.
the last
Lovecraft
moments
type
in
of
the
thing.
church's
Very,
investigation.
Tales of the weird, tales of, the crypt type of thing, strange tales type of Pulp Fiction type of thing. And these are the different genres that happened. In the next video that I do, I'm going to do the next part, which would be part 3 and 4 kind of together. We'll just call it 3 for the quest. And that one is, we're going to talk more about the modules and everything, and I'll get into some of the other worlds in D&D, like maybe Dark Sun or the Eberron world, which is where the DDO game actually is based out of. And there are several others, but we'll save that for then. But this chain of modules, what's so important about this chain of modules, and I'm sorry to get to it at the very end here, is that it gives you lower level items like that cloak, like the quest rewards at the end of it, that are designed literally for reincarnated characters. They come back at like 7th or 9th level. I think some of the cloaks and whatnot come back at 5th level. And these are designed to really empower your characters early. Now, you cannot run through these modules at 5th level or 7th level. Even 9th level will be a little tough. They're designed for the second life. So this game has really built into it in a deep, layered way what reincarnation is and being able to do that. And I think I'll talk more about what happens when you reincarnate in the next video as well. So if this is something you want to know more about, let me know in the comments down below. Eventually this character will get back up to 20th and I will reincarnate into a paladin and we'll go ahead and play from there. So if you like this video, let me know that and give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like that, just let me know down in the comments. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Keep rolling those dice. Bye.